No longer are we being teased with little bits of information, we actually have concrete details about Spinal. What's up dudes, Maximilian here, and you might remember a video from last week going over some of the stuff that was hinted at the previous Microsoft live stream talking about Spinal, but no more, because today they finally went into full disclosure about Spinal's gameplay details, and we have some pretty solid facts about what he's gonna be like in the new Killer Instinct. However, we still have no visuals or details on him in motion. His gameplay is still a secret, and it looks like we're gonna have to wait until next week, but we have a solid, somewhat confirmation of a date. It looks like next week, before the next live stream, which is Thursday of next week, we're gonna have the trailer for Spinal. There's still no other confirmation of his release, but they are sticking to January. So at least by the next live stream, which is the 30th, we should either have him on somewhere near that day or after that day. Either way, he's not that far away, thank God, because believe it or not, dudes, the last time we saw anything really concrete on Spinal or even saw him in motion has been 90 freaking days. And that's kind of a crazy long time when you put things into perspective. Either way, let's go through the list of actual confirmed gameplay elements about Spinal. First up is the use of skulls. Spinal actually acquires skulls through several means in the new Killer Instinct, and they modify certain versions of his attacks. They notably said that the heavy specials that Spinal will do, or any of his heavy special attacks, will occupy or use a skull, but it will modify the move in some way. They didn't mention what the way actually is, but they will do something more beneficial than using the regular heavy version of the move. Spinal also has a run. We don't know how to actually engage the run itself, but it isn't like Glacius, where Glacius notoriously does not have a forward dash or a back dash. Spinal will have dashing in some way, but also has a forward-moving run as well. He also has his classic absorb move, which they mentioned is back and light punch, which allows you to absorb attacks, and this thing absorbs a huge variety of attacks. The example they used was, I think it was Jago's Shadow Wind Kick, and he absorbed all 5 hits of it, and it gave him 5 skulls. So that's one way of getting skulls, is absorbing attacks by using back and light punch. They did mention that Spinal does not have good range, that maybe some of his close range buttons aren't as desirable as some other characters, but he has other tools to make up for it. His teleport is returning, and they were thinking about how it could be abusable. The teleport in the previous Killer Instinct game worked in certain ways. You can teleport behind the opponent and stuff like that. They did mention that you cannot run away with the teleport, that the teleport is probably going to be used offensively, and they also mentioned that the shadow move of his teleport, or Skeleport as it used to be called, can also be used in the air, so who knows how that's actually going to affect gameplay. It is also mentioned that Spinal, in comparison to the rest of the cast, is kind of difficult to use. He's not an easy pick-up-and-play character like Saberwolf or Jago or somebody like that. They more compared him to Glacius. Some guys were arguing that Glacius is a little bit more difficult to use than Spinal. Others saying that, no, I think Spinal is a little bit more difficult to use. So interesting to see there that Spinal might be one of the upper end of more difficult to grasp characters, but not in his inputs. They mentioned his inputs are all going to be mostly quarter circle motions, and that was one of their goals of the game, to not have characters with crazy inputs like some classic 90s fighting games. They did talk about curses. When you use your instinct and you actually hit your opponents with certain skull moves, it will absorb meter and instinct, actually taking it away and potentially giving it to you. They didn't confirm a lot of this, but sometimes when you use your skull attacks, or maybe these heavy version of special moves, they will actually eat your enemy's meter. They will actually take it away from them, and that's represented in some of the screenshots by a hovering cursed skull that goes around their body. They didn't talk too much about the instinct curse, but that's heavily implied, so we'll see what happens there. And finally, one of the craziest things about Spinal is, yep, his dive kick is back. Some of you guys might have forgotten that he did have a dive kick in the older Killer Instinct games, especially KI2, and it's shockingly unsafe. I'm probably going to guess that it's kind of similar to a dive kick of maybe a Third Strike character like Yun and Yang, because one of the developers was saying how you need to aim it at their feet, which means that it has certain block stun elements similar to older Capcom games. So it's a dive kick that if you hit it really shallow, it's not going to be good, but if you space it and time it really well, it's probably going to be an effective defensive tool. And they were also saying how Spinal is kind of a defensive character in comparison to the rest of the cast. He does have more defensive options than everyone else does in the game, so we'll see how that goes. But that is about it as far as the big things that Spinal is bringing to the table. Oh, and they also mentioned that he has a special way of doing manuals. They were talking about ghostly manuals, how he's able to add another attack or something along the lines of an easier to execute manual, which could actually make him pretty powerful and extremely hard to combo break depending on how it's used. But yeah, That's a lot of information. Spinal right now seems like he could be really good. He seems like he can affect a lot of other members of the cast really hard. They were mentioning how he might do really well against Glacia, so that's a really interesting matchup. But especially the fact that he can actually remove meter, like take it away and potentially give it to himself, is really good. Even if it's instinct, that's amazing. I think they also mentioned that his instinct might give him a bonus skull thing of some kind. We don't know exactly what that is yet. They didn't really go into much detail about his instinct, but a lot of stuff about skulls. They mentioned how he's not as good without skulls. When he gets skulls, he becomes like a nightmare, which sounds cool. He sounds like he can be pretty freaking terrifying, and as long as he's not completely broken, we'll see. He has an upward fireball. They were also mentioning he also has fireballs that move horizontally across the screen. A lot of stuff. It seems like Spinal's bringing a lot to the table in terms of a new Killer Instinct character. So, let me know what you guys think about this stuff in the comments below. Do you think this sounds freaking crazy, ridiculous, broken? Or does every character in KI kind of feel already broken as it is, and that's why it's kind of a balanced fighting game at the moment? Either way, my apologies that there's no other confirmed footage of Spinal yet. I'm gonna get on that as soon as possible, guys, and as soon as he is available and in-game with this information, we're gonna do a complete character breakdown as soon as I get my hands on him. Thank you dudes very much for watching. My name is Maximilian, and we're T-minus 1 week from Dat Bone Man. Take care, dudes, and I'll see you later.